Welcome to the Sermon in the Valley with Pastor Rob Eller. You can find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to the podcast on any of those platforms and share it with your friends and family. Thank you. The views expressed in this episode are solely that of the host and do not reflect the official views of Emmanuel Lutheran Church in New Philadelphia, Ohio, the Northeastern Ohio Synod, or the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. Thank you. Welcome back to the Sermon in the Valley. Pastor Rob Eller here with your Thursday episode, and a return to a somewhat dormant series I had started a few months ago called The Gospel According to Ted Lasso. Season 3 of the show has wrapped up months ago, so I trust that those of you who've wanted to watch it have already watched it, and if you haven't, I highly recommend it. It's a great show. On the surface, it appears to be a sports comedy, but really, it's so much more than a sports comedy. It's just full of wholesome lessons that you can just take and adopt in your daily life. You could be Ted Lasso, and there's nothing wrong with it. So I wanted to come back to this series. I haven't done it for a while, and just touch on a topic that has been on my mind recently from that show, and I want to share with all of you. But before I share it, I want to share some Bible verses that tie into it. From the Gospel of Matthew. Do not judge, so that you may not be judged. For with the judgment you make, you will be judged, and the measure you give will be the measure you get. And then from the Gospel of John, let any one of you who is without sin cast the first stone. And from Paul's letter to the Romans. Therefore you have no excuse, whoever you are, when you judge others, for in passing judgment on another you condemn yourself, because you, the judge, are doing the very same things. Well, in case you haven't figured out the topic yet, the topic of this episode is judging others. And so let's start with first setting the scene as to where I'm pulling this from. This comes from the first season of Ted Lasso. So if you've watched it, you've already seen this one, and it's a pretty iconic scene. So let me set the picture for you. Ted is at the local pub in Richmond, the one where all the fans go, the one where he goes because his apartment's nearby. He's there trying to enjoy a beer, and in walks Rupert, the ex-husband of the team's owner, and he's there with his current, I think at this point, wife, girlfriend, whoever. And the fans have been heckling Ted for a while now because he's not doing that good, because he's an American football coach coaching European football, or what we call soccer, in England, and they're getting a little fed up with his style. And so Ted gets challenged to a game of darts, and it kind of turns into a into a bit of a hustle, because Ted's just casually throwing darts at the dartboard, and then Rupert joins in, and Rupert says, "How about a wager?" And the wager ends up being, if Rupert wins, he can create the lineup card for the end of the season. If Ted wins, Rupert can't be anywhere near the owner's box with his ex-wife. And so then Rupert thinks he's hustled Ted, so he pulls out his own personal set of darts. It's very fancy because they come in two pieces in a little hard case. And Ted's like, well, hey, he's gonna try to hustle me. I'm gonna hustle him. He's like, oh, look, I forgot I'm left-handed, and he starts throwing darts with his left hand, and they are just hitting the mark. And so it goes on, and it's a pretty competitive game. Until the very end, when The score is such a way that Ted has to make, in his last turn, 3 almost impossible throws. And Rupert, the ex-husband, is getting very cocky. He's saying, "Shall I?" Basically, saying, "No, shall I give you the lineup card now?" And Ted's just looking at the board and he starts musing, saying, "You know, people have underestimated me my entire life, and I never figured out why." And he goes on telling about a story about how he took his son to school one day and he saw a billboard with a quote, and he says it's from Walt Whitman, but spoiler, it's really not Walt Whitman. But it says, "Be curious, not judgmental." And Ted goes on saying how, no, people have underestimated him, and they've judged him his entire life rather than being curious and asking him questions. And he doesn't start spewing off like random questions about himself. This question he's directly pointing right at Rupert. He's saying, like, the question like, "Have you played a lot of darts, Ted?" Makes his first throw right on the money, right where I need to go. And he replies, "Yeah, ever since I was a little kid up until my dad passed when I was in my teens." Makes the second throw, again, right on the money, right where I need to go. And point being, Rupert judged him as this dumb American when really he knows what he's doing. And then Ted makes the final throw. The final throw has to be a bullseye. He lines it up, throws the dart, nails it in the bullseye. He made all 3 throws, proving that Rupert judged him rather than being curious and asking him questions. And that is a story that just resonates in our lives. I mean, that scene, I play that scene back so much, because so many times in our lives we judge others. I've been guilty of it. I'll be the first to admit I have judged others without getting to know them, without asking questions. I have those ingrained prejudices that I have been working to get rid of, to fight through, and to say, no, I'm not going to judge others. And I've been getting through it. Not to spoil my sermon coming up on Sunday, because I touched a little bit on this topic in that sermon as well. When I was a teacher, I wouldn't judge the students based on what other teachers told me. I would go into each classroom, each semester, and you know what? These kids all have a blank slate with me. My opinions of them will be based on my interactions with them, not based on what other teachers tell me. And lo and behold, some of those quote-unquote problem kids that I got warned about turned out to be the best kids I ever worked with, because I gave them a fair shot. I didn't prejudge them based on what others told me. And to circle back to those Bible verses, do not judge so that you may not be judged. It's plain and simple. It comes straight from the Sermon on the Mount, from Matthew. Jesus is telling others, don't judge people without getting to know them first, because then you in turn will be judged for that judging. It goes into a vicious circle. You judge someone, you're going to get judged for that judgment, and it's just going to keep going and going and going. And Paul's basically saying the same thing. You have no excuse. When you judge others for passing judgment on another, you condemn yourself, because you're doing the very same thing. It's plain and simple. It really is. And the best one of all, from John, let the person who is without sin cast the first stone. And as a rebuke to that, there's a great quote that actually popped up in my Facebook memories today, that I shared it a year ago. The only one qualified to throw a stone didn't. Jesus said, let any who's without sin. Jesus is the only one who is without sin. By his qualifications, he was the only one who could throw a stone, and guess what? He didn't do it. So if Jesus didn't throw the first stone, what reasoning do we think we have to be able to do that? We have no reasoning to do that. None whatsoever. So why do we think we can get away with that? Why do we think that we are suddenly superior to Jesus and being able to judge others? Because we aren't. We really aren't. Do not judge others. No. I'm opening my sermon this weekend, and you'll hear it on Monday with my Monday episode. I'm saying, no, don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge people based on what we see or what we hear. Because we're going to be wrong 99.9% of the time. Yeah, there are some times where we prejudge someone and know maybe we're right, or maybe we're close. But don't do it. Give them a chance. Get to know them, ask questions, or really let their actions speak for themselves. But don't judge others. Now, to be clear, this is not a rant against the legal system. That's because when we judge others in the legal system, we are asking questions. We are getting to know them. We are getting to know the circumstances. Therefore, we can pass judgment then. But don't go around giving opinions on people before you really truly get to know them. It's not Christian to do that. It's just really not. To pass off these things of saying, circling back to the long saga of the homeless shelter across the street. And this is not an episode about that, but this is just an example that came to mind. In a lot of the criticisms we've seen regarding what neighborhood the shelter was trying to build in, people would say, "Oh no, these are criminals. These are drug addicts or drug dealers that are going to be invading our neighborhood with the shelter." And there's zero evidence of that. You get to know the people of the shelter, you realize that that's not the case at all. But it's that prejudgment that people have in their mind that prevented them from seeing the truth. But that's not the whole point of this. I don't want to go down into that rabbit hole. I have spoken enough about the shelter in the last year. You might hear more about it in the future, but that's not the theme of this episode. I encourage all of you to watch Ted Lasso. It's a really wholesome, good show. Especially this part. Especially the part about judging others. That's all I have for this shorter episode for this Thursday. If you, of course, as always, if you like what you hear, please subscribe to the podcast. Please share this podcast with your friends and family, or just share it in general. Because the good news is for everyone to hear, not just a few. It's for everyone, and everyone should hear the good news. The Sermon in the Valley is written and produced in the Patrick Stevens Broadcast Studio in the heart of the Tuscarawas Valley. God's peace be with each and every single one of you today and every day. Have a blessed day.